Hello everyone. So today I will be talking about how to install SxA. This is just to show you how to install it and how you can start working and using the Experience Editor with SxA. But I'm not going to go too far into setting up any websites with SxA or showcasing any of the features of SxA. But I plan on doing this is kind of a intro into how to install it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing some sessions on showcasing some of the features and also walking through how we can start building full SxA based websites using SxA. What is SxA for those that don't know? It's an experience accelerator built by Sitecore. It's a pretty powerful tool. Sitecore has basically taken what a lot of developers have built over the last for any site that we build. Every site is built custom out of the box. So SxA or any accelerator for that matter is really the goal is to be able to have a bunch of subset of components that allows the users of these websites to build sites quickly. SxA, what's really strong about SxA versus BrainJox Score, for example, those are the two big ones out there. There might be others, but those are the only two I'm actually even aware of that are out there in terms of accelerators for Sitecore. But the big difference and benefit to Sitecore's SxA is that it has some renderings that allow you to build pretty dynamic data sources and templates and still be able to build and use one or two subsets of components that allow you to pull in these dynamic data sources that you're going to define not out of the box, but define based off, let's say you have events template. You can actually build some sort of control to render that with SxA without having to build a unique view rendering for it. I'll have to show what I mean by that in the future. But for today's session, let's just go with setting up our instance. So the first things that we're going to do is I'm going to load up my Sitecore Instance Manager. As you can see, I have lots of instances in here. I'm going to create a new SxA 825. So Sitecore Experience Accelerator is at 1.4 is the current version, which is what I'm going to install today. It suggests that you should have at least 8.2.3, but I'll be using 8.2.5, which shouldn't be an issue. So to get started I'm just going to go back to the home page and click Install Instance. Obviously, you need to have downloaded using the Get Sitecore option to download 8.2.5, but you can use 8.2.3 and above for what I'm showing you today to work with version 1.4 of SxA. If you obviously are using an older version of SxA, some of the features I'm going to be showing you over the next few weeks obviously wouldn't be there, but also you might not need 8.2.3. You might need an older version. I believe 8.1 actually works with SxA in some scenarios, but not. You obviously need newer versions to work with 1.4, which actually has some pretty cool new features over the 1.0 version or older versions of SxA. So let's go get started. Like I said, I was going to call this SxA 8.2.5. So I'll just give it that kind of naming convention. The rest is I'm going to keep the same, attach some SQL databases, SQL prefixes, location, pool mode integrated, framework 4.0. So all that's good. I'm going to leave all these unchecked. I'm not going to install web forms markers, although it might be recommended to do that, but I'm not going to install it now. In the future, I might install it in this instance just to showcase those options as well. I'm going to go next, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click to install the PowerShell 4.6. So for the Sitecore Experience Accelerator 1.4, you need the Sitecore PowerShell extensions, or SPE as it's abbreviated as. but 4.6. And then I actually would like to do the Sitecore Clean Slate as well. So the Clean Slate, what is that? That's something that Jamie Cam built. He actually has a GitHub repository for this, which I'll include in a link below this tutorial. It was kind of funny because I actually asked about this on Stack Exchange, the Sitecore SxA, about how can we just clean out your instance using SIM, and now I find myself using this all the time. I can have a blank slate right off the bat, and really powerful when you mix that with SxA, because you don't really want all this custom or all the standard stuff installed by default. You'd rather start from scratch, start setting up SxA, setting up its tenants and setting up its sites, and not having to worry about the example items that it creates from Sitecore by default. All right, so, and you notice I'm not going to actually select the Sitecore Experience Accelerator. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually install this after the instance is ready. I've found that using SIM, this won't actually work correctly if you try to install these two and then try to install the Experience Accelerator. It's not going to work as well. So I typically don't include it. So I click next. I'm not going to choose any of these options, and I'm basically going to say install. And in a few minutes, you'll notice that it's going to be done. It's going to take, like I said, several minutes to complete. Once it's done, then we'll show how to install SxA. All right, now we're done with the install of the Sitecore instance. So now what we're going to do is just click on Open in Browser, just to make this a little easier, which is just going to open up a new tab with SxA - whatever you want to call it, 825.local. Now it loads. Let's go on over to the Sitecore side, and the login is going to be admin B. Since this is a fresh install, we haven't set up any new users or roles or anything like that. So we're just going to have the default admin B password. There's no point in saving that because that's pretty easy to remember. But now what we need to do is install SxA itself. So just to show kind of what's currently set up, is if we go into the content editor, first off, you notice that there's all those Sitecore PowerShell extensions were there, but also the clean slate, you'll notice that there's nothing underneath content, which means all the home items, the workflow, the things like that are automatically installed with a default instance of Sitecore are no longer there, which is great. We don't want any of those example items. There's no point. I don't know why Sitecore includes half of those sometimes, because what most developers want is a clean slate anyways. But anyways, you'll notice that the only module is there is the SPE stuff. There's currently no other templates in here. So like I said, now we need to just install SxA. To do this, we'll just click on over to the desktop and click on the Start menu, Development Tools, and click on Installation Wizard. Now I'm going to upload a package. I'm going to choose a file. I've already taken it to the SxA's 1.4 revision 170623. I'm just going to click. This is inside a zip file, so you have to kind of extract the zip file first, and then you can click the package.zip. So you can click Open, Next. I'm just going to choose to overwrite existing files, just be on the safe side, and I'll click Upload. And now I have it. I'm going to click Next, and now I just have to say I agree to licensing agreements. I say I agree, click Next. It's going to tell me some messages about things I need to have installed by default. SxA 8.2, no, this is a Sitecore Experience platform, which is just Sitecore itself. Needs 8.2. Like I was saying before, update 3 is the minimum requirement. I'm using update 5, so obviously it shouldn't be an issue here. And then in addition to that, like I said, PowerShell extensions are needed, SPEs. the SPE module, full 4.6 for Sitecore 8, which you can get from the marketplace, which the link is there. If you are doing this from scratch, you can just download and go to just do a Google search for Sitecore PowerShell extensions, and the first result will be this page. So that's it. It's telling me all the versions I'm installing, and I'll click install. All right, now SxA is done installing. So now we're just going to select restart the Sitecore client, which basically just refreshes this shell. Restart the Sitecore server means the whole IIS website would restart, but that's not necessary. So we'll close. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to go over to the content editor. So there's still one step remaining. If we hadn't run the clean slate, we would have a home item. And if we went into the experience editor in that home item, we would not actually see all the SxA stuff yet. What we need before we do that is to actually create the tenant folder, if there is one, the tenant item, and then the site item itself. Until you have a site item, you're not going to be able to run SxA. Some signs that SxA is installed is that the experience editor you'll see as an option here: publish item, console, scripts, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a tenant item, and I will just call this website. A tenant is a kind of a subsection of your organization. So a tenant might be accounting. Another tenant might be IT. Typically, a kind of a tenant for me would be the website itself, and then like the main website. So if you were acme.com, you would have acme.com as a tenant. And then if you had another part of your organization, let's say you had a financial website, such as you had acmefinancials.com, you might create a different tenant for that. And in that tenant, you can actually define what features you want to include in that. Obviously for this, I'm just going to include everything because I'm going to be doing future tutorials on some of this. So I'm going to click OK. And basically now it's running a script. This is different than you've probably ever seen within other parts of Sitecore, because what this is doing is it's running SPE or Sitecore PowerShell to run scripts, which will basically build the structure of that tenant for you. You're probably used to branches. I haven't actually covered a topic about branches yet, but I will in the future. Branching is somewhat similar to this, but this goes kind of a step further. This can actually create all types of things. It can even run file changes on the front end. So now it's done. We'll click close, and now we have this tenant called website. It includes some some setting things where some of this would sit. So this actually went ahead and created a specific area in the templates area where you would define templates for this specific tenant. So for example, project website. So now in here we can actually, as you can see, it's already added all the ones that are needed by default, but now we can customize these specifically for this tenant, which is kind of unique. And you can then also define new ones. So if you needed more page type templates, such as an events page or a blog page, you would define it in here. So it kind of creates an isolated place for your templates for this specific tenant. One thing to note about SxA is that based on my other tutorials I've had on Helix, this follows a Helix structure. So SxA is based off Helix. So that way you actually notice the feature, the foundation, and the project layers there. So that's kind of interesting to note about SxA. SxA is the fact that it uses Helix. So we create a website now, or a tenant called website. I'm going to actually create that website. You can create site folders as well. You can really kind of start to break up your infrastructure this way. So we will call this Acme website. And the host name is these are all kind of things that you're used to setting inside the site folder or the site's definition. But this is actually abstracted out so that you're actually defining it within Sitecore items instead of using a settings item or a Sitecore configuration patch. So that's kind of interesting to note, which we'll cover more in the future as well. Here again, we're going to select what features we want available to us in this specific site. Now there's also a theme. So I will call this Acme theme. And I'm just going to keep the pre-selected wireframe here. And then lastly, you can select the type of grid that this uses. You can grid 960, Foundation, or Bootstrap. I'm just going to use Bootstrap by default. And now it's just going to go through and create the site structure for my Acme website. All right, it's done installing that Acme website. So what pops up is the SxA Site Manager. So as we create more and more sites within our Sitecore instance, we're going to get more and more rows mentioned here. One thing to note is this is actually not an SxA website because this is actually what's defined in our site's patch config. Well, we don't actually have a patch config for this, but in the Sitecore patch config that patches the web config, there is actually a site's definition for the website. But we can obviously edit that without going in and editing the Sitecore patch, although ideally we would patch the patch, creating a new patch that patches the Sitecore patch, which patches the web config. I know that sounds confusing, but that's the ideal way of doing that. And I will at some point cover patching in a tutorial. So what I want to do is just open up the Acme website. So I just want to give it a target host name. So I'm just going to call it acme.com. The www is not really necessary there, but you could be not so specific. But anyways, this is just a cool editor for that, but it's not needed. So now what's happened is we created Acme website, and inside here now you're going to start to see the site structure. So in the home item is kind of going to be underneath here under home. You're going to have all the structures for your blog or whatever you create. Now, obviously, out of the box, out of the home, you're not going to have all those items. You actually need to go and your project down here and start defining some new templates, which I'll cover in a later session on how to start creating some of those things and start building out a SxA style website using this as a kind of a starting point. Inside data, these are all the data sources for a website specific setting. So if we wanted to create data sources for links, you could create a link or a links folder to further organize it. There's presentation. This is where some of the kind of more advanced features, which I'll be showing you here soon, such as rendering variances and available renderings. This tells you, out of the what's defined renderings, you can actually specify which renderings of those you can actually use inside this specific website, which is cool. So it's kind of a filtered way of filtering the renderings and filtering it down to a specific subset for a website or for a tenant. Then there's the settings area, which is where you can define settings for your website. And, there's different areas here, facets and things like that, which like I said, I'm going to be covering this in a later session on. I think what would make sense is we're going to just start creating a website with SxA, start covering how to add modules and things like that. And at some point, I'm going to cover how to create new modules that follow the SxA kind of standard of building a module for SxA. So the home item, let's just go into the Experience Editor. You can also right click and go to the Experience Editor. That's a feature of SxA. All right, now it's done loading. I will beware of you of that process of loading SxA for the first time in the Experience Accelerator, in the Experience editor, can take quite a few minutes. But once it's loaded, it seems to run and act more responsibly. A few things that are new in here is, first, you'll notice that there's kind of this wireframey style interface here. That's because I selected that as a theme when I was creating this website. So that's why there's kind of this wireframe kind of style being used. It's just based off the selection I made. But keep in mind, you can select a different one, which I'll show in a later session about how to use the theme engine and using Creative Exchange and things like that. But some things that are out of the box is you can select different components, and these are all the features, and these are different components you can place in here. And this is the true power of SxA. So you can start doing SEO, and this is kind of a limited SEO. It's not everything is in here. This is based on sitemap generator and meta tags, but there's also other things that you can affect, tags and things like that. So there's always room for improvement with SxA. If you watch my tutorials and you're interested in building something for SxA, definitely there's opportunities to get back and in the community, build modules for on top of SxA. Can definitely be done. So definitely something that you should look into doing if you're interested. Anyways, this concludes today's tutorial. I think for most of you, getting to this point will allow you to start playing with SxA. But like I said, I'm going to be doing tutorials based off this SxA-825 instance. So I'm going to try to come up with a website that we can do together that may include some more advanced features, and I'll show how some of the features or components part of SxA can make some of that stuff really easy to do and wouldn't require any additional development. But I'll also include where some additional development can be done and where we can build some new features for SxA and how you should do that. So if you have any questions about SxA or you're having any issues while installing, please feel free to comment and let me know if you have any problems, and I'll be happy to help. All right, thanks. Bye.